today. Kim, say hello.
Thank you, Lauren, for that beautiful introduction. And welcome to Lauren's program. I think you'll all find it ever changing. Your life will change as you walk through this program. Just be ready to be open and allow those great changes. Thanks, Lauren.
Tell us a little bit about, so if I were just to show your business card right now in the business universe, what would your business card say? And what do you do with your gifts to help people, during the day?
So my business card is rather simple. It just has my name and it says Energy Nurse Healer. And a lot of people question on that. Well, what is that? How can a nurse be a healer? And it's quite easy to explain if we look at the depth of the nursing paradigms from years ago. Many of the nursing theorists talked about our energy, our spirituality, all the pieces that make us up. However, over the years, we lost touch with that. So I'm grateful in my career, which is 46 years now, hard to believe, I've been a nurse for 46 years, that I've been able to delve into those paradigms and bring them back and support people on their journey of wellness and re-empowering them to claim their own healing. That's really key in what I do. People often figure they're going to come to me and I'm going to fix them by utilizing different energetic techniques and working with their energy. And no, my job is not to fix them, but to empower them and reopen the energy so they can heal themselves.
I can attest to that because, in all of our sessions, you've always said, it's just a privilege to watch you reclaim yourself, and that's what Movement Matters is really all about, right? I often say, gosh, if we could be our own self-care concierge, and I mean that it sounds kind of cool, right? But I mean that spiritually as much as physically and emotionally. It's about understanding ourselves enough to know kind of what to do in all sorts of different moments. In our first workshop class, Kim, we talked about, really stabilizing oneself in the midst of any decision making that may not be easy, right? And so when we talk about growth, we know that sometimes there are growing pains. And those growing pains aren't necessarily bad, are they?
No, they're not. And I like to refer to them as we're being stretched. That God is saying to us, come on, I'm going to stretch you a little bit into coming to know what was really created. Because I do believe most of the time we don't have a clue of what was really created and the beautiful abilities and gifts that we were given. And so as you work your process with your program, people are going to be able to start to find those inner gifts and the ability through your techniques to expand them and be willing to be stretched. It's not always comfortable to be stretched. And sometimes we're going, no, don't stretch us. But if opportunity is being presented, it's because we're ready. We're ready to grow, we're ready to expand, and it brings new opportunity, of course, and new knowing of what was created in this being that most of the time I find people are not even aware of. We're not taught that from our medical model. We're not taught how to take care of ourselves on an energetic level to nurture our mind, body, and our spirit. We hear those words all the time. Oh, we're mind, body, spirit, but they've almost become cliche to us. We're not delving into the depth of that. And as you mentioned, the ability to grow and to expand. And sometimes we have to walk through some old false beliefs that are in our way. And it's nobody's fault,
Right.
It's just that we picked up some sentences or seeds, as I like to call them, and then they started to grow, and maybe they're a little weedy in this beautiful garden. And then as we work through a program like Lauren's going to be offering, we start to find that and learn how to clear out our garden so we can be totally present to ourselves, thus allowing us to expand even more. And this is Riley.
Guys, hi, Riley.
This is Riley, and he's looking for his ball. There you go.
But really growing without that sense of guilt about, why is that so hard for us to let go of?
Well, again, if we go back to the fact that these thought processes were planted, right? We were little children and we're taught this is how it should be. And so we said, okay, this is right. This is what our people knew. And so all of a sudden, as we start to grow and expand in our lives, we come up against those beliefs that were so ingrained into us and that we had so much respect for, right? Because that's what our people knew. And we never lose respect for that, but we have to understand and we have to come to look at, wait a minute, let me investigate this further. Does this fit in my spirituality as I am today? Right? Because like yourself, growing up Italian Catholic, right? I mean, and I embrace that knowledge that I was given as a child. And in my career, I can't tell you how valuable it's been to be able to support people walking on this journey when they hit those pieces of that guilt, you know, and I can say, oh, I get it, I understand it, but let's step beyond it and look truly what was Christ saying and how was that influenced by what man, right, wrote the word, what man thought and where it was at the time. So may I give an example of what I'm talking about?
Please do.
So it's a very simple very simple. I had a lovely client come in. She had lost her husband about 4 months prior, so still very much in the grief stage. Very, very devout, beautiful Catholic lady. And she came in her first visit and she was just beside herself. And she says to me, I'm going to go to hell. And I said, oh dear, you know, what happened? And she said, well, you know, since my husband died, I lose track of the days and the time and everything. And I forgot to wash my blouses. And it was Sunday and I needed to wash my blouses because I didn't have any. And I needed to have one for Monday because I had an appointment to go out. And I just took her hand and I said, oh my goodness. Do you really think if Christ was in the room with us right now, which he is he's always with us. I said, do you think he'd stand there and say, lady, you're going to hell because you washed your blouses on a Sunday? And she looked at me and she goes, I don't think so. I said, well, I'm glad you don't think so because my work hours are Sundays, Mondays, and days from the office space that I'm using right now. And I said, well, then I'm really going to go to hell, you know? And so it's these false beliefs of guilt, right? That sometimes stop us from growing. So we've been working on a lot of those belief systems, you know, like idle hands, or idle hands, your hands shouldn't be idle because that's the work of the devil. But then we say, wait a minute, when Christ went to the desert to be with his father, right? To be quiet and regroup himself. His hands were quiet. When he went to the temple to pray and to talk to his father, he tells us that, right? It's in scripture. His hands were idle. When he went to the sea to rest. I mean, so we have to think about these seeds that were planted that give us these beliefs, which, yeah, we understand them, but now it's time to understand and step beyond what was fed that creates this guilt in us from going forward.
Right. And so that's about getting more aware of
Exactly.
oneself.
It's about us growing and expanding past the box that we've been in, right? We have to get out of the box. We have to step out, open the doors to this life that's out there on a new level for us of spirituality, right? That helps
Right.
us grow emotionally, mentally, and most often we see changes in the physical body as well.
Right.
We are all three. We are physical, we are emotional, mental, and we are spiritual. If we're not feeding all three, or if one of these false guilt pieces is living in the emotional, mental body, well, the spiritual and the physical are going to suffer as well.
Peace is in the stillness. We talked about that last night in the workshop. We have to anchor down and find some sort of stillness within ourselves. And that's what we're learning how to do. But it really does turn up the volume of the spiritual ear, if you will, the energetic ear, to hear that it is okay.
That's correct.
That it is okay to let go of the false beliefs, that nothing bad is going to happen. I remember you even really coaching me through that in just a very gentle way. Is it's okay to let go. And yes, it feels incredibly comfortable. But the gifts that are on the other side are so immeasurable that why wouldn't we want to let go, right? And in the program, we call that grace, right? We may call that the grace of God, the grace of your understanding, your center, your source, your spirit, but it's still grace nonetheless. And I really appreciate that connection now, because an environment of the mind, body, spirit alignment, we find out wherever we go that not everybody is on the same track.
Correct.
Not every track is of that same vibration, right? That same energy compilation of those experiences. Not everybody has the desire or has declared that alignment is a priority, and what that means to them is very different than what it means to maybe a boss or a leader or a manager or a supervisor or anyone that has a little hierarchical authority over you.
And some people don't even recognize what alignment means. They don't know what that means in a sense, on a spiritual level or emotional, mental. We heard about spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence. Remember when all those articles were coming out? We didn't hear so much about spiritual, more of that emotional piece, right? But yes, we're going to be out in the community, working, doing what our gifts are, and hit all kinds of pieces. Some will feel good, some won't feel good, right? Some will be very, very challenging. Some of them we can flow through. But it's in coming back to support this being on a daily basis, to realign ourselves, to grab hold. Okay, yes, I'm out there in the like yourself in the corporate world, almost out in the storm sometimes, right? Getting tossed around out there. Sure. But we also know, you have your link. You can anchor in, right? Connect, get in alignment. And I simply say sometimes, right, we have to put our heads on straight and reconnect. And I have many other, corporate people, CEOs and such that have come to me over the years. And I'm like, yeah, you have to take the moments in the day, sometimes just to breathe and regroup and recenter. And it's not always an easy task, because we're trying to meet all these other demands, right? And meet schedules and expectations, which is a whole nother avenue.
Yes.
So all we can do is make sure we're taking the time to reset. We have almost like you know how you reboot your computer. right? We have to make sure during the day we're resetting ourselves. Come
Yes.
back to center, take a breath, and then go on in the
So,
craziness.
growing without feeling guilty is one of those 4 concepts of really the benefit of forming that deeper connection with oneself. If we can
Exactly.
learn how to anchor in, and if we learn how to turn that beacon on, right, and have the spirit freely flowing in that safe environment, right, that feels so good and so real and so present, then it could at least position us to give us a chance to grow in a manner that may not as be so conceptually painful, right? Because, I was talking a little bit about, me making mountains out of molehills, and that's just an old concept of mine. It's just an old, I might feel fear about something, and it may not be as bad as I think it is, right? But
Yeah.
in order to let go of that, in order to grow, I still have to grow in order to even get there. So what do you say to people that are really in this decision-making process? If you were just to give, another little summary of those constructs that are kind of making us feel that heaviness or encumbered with guilt, and why the importance of growth is there for the taking. I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think all of us need to be on a journey of growth. We must be. And I have found through the years of not only doing this work with clients, but doing the work with myself, that when I would hit upon one of those pieces, right, that was like, oh, stop me in my tracks, that I would have to be just like, take a breath, like you said, get a moment. Now, sometimes it was it would be so uncomfortable, I'd have to say, okay, I got to go back to that later. If I couldn't handle it in the moment, that's okay. Take a breath, look at it, and evaluate it. I say to people a lot of times, can we put on our spiritual glasses? Literally thinking of putting on these glasses that allow us to view things instead of getting all the emotional attachments to them. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does. And I think that I'm going to I'm going to
So
clear some of mine out as well, and look through a different lens. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of what you do. I'm so excited that we're sharing this part of the journey together. And will you join us again for the rest of the concepts? Next week is trust without fear. And we're going to just try to keep understanding a little bit more about ourselves, so that when we go into our next course, Poise, Posture, Grace, we can really start implementing that, in more of an intentional way. So what an honor and a blessing it is to have you with us, but also more importantly in my life. Thank you, Kim.
thank you for inviting me to be part of this beautiful program you're creating to help people embrace who they really are. And I do hope they put on those spiritual glasses, because when we're looking at things and they seem so overwhelming, we know our emotional, mental being got caught up a little. Just put those glasses on and view it and step back and breathe. And then all of a sudden it becomes a lot lighter, and you feel the grace as you spoke of. You feel it fill you instead of you being connected to all of that on an emotional basis. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'd love to come back in the future and continue to watch your program grow and evolve, and just bring more healing to people. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.